Come with us on a journey into the unknown, the unexplained, and the unbelievable. We will test your senses and challenge your beliefs. A world where science and religion clash. Or do they? You will meet real people and hear real stories, but you will not believe. You will witness strange sights and hear strange sounds, but you will not believe. This is the New England Ghost Project. Welcome to the night.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Ghost Chronicles Next Generation with my partner, the blonde Bombshell herself, Anne Kerrigan.
Hello.
I am New England's own Van Helsing, as opposed to someone else's,
That's right.
Ron Kolek. And we are doing our fifth show.
Wow.
Although the third show has disappeared, I understand.
Oh, we'll find it.
Well, could be paranormal. I don't know. You think it's
Maybe
paranormal?
the ghost took it. No.
No.
No, I definitely don't think it's paranormal. It's just our good filing
Well, it's
system.
not normal.
But we'll find
Oh,
it.
it is normal. Okay, so it's not paranormal.
Hey, we want to give a shout out tonight
Yes, we do.
to
Russ.
Hannigan, who
Russ Hannigan.
usually is here directing our show, but he's out with a little bit of surgery for a couple of weeks. He'll be back. He'll be fine. He'll be a whole new man, but we just wanted to say hey, and hopefully that he'll be up and around really quickly.
Right.
We also want to thank our guest director, Kevin Tocci from Whitman.
Hey, Kevin.
Yep. Come over and doing us a huge favor by directing tonight's show.
So we're giving out the kudos. We might as well thank Sarah, what's her name?
Sarah.
Sarah?
Sammy. And Claudia and Zach.
And Claudia and Zach, of course, Zach.
Yes, they're all jumping around.
So
the control room.
Zach has been here like every show, and so has Sam, right?
Pretty much.
Since the beginning?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm pointing to him like everybody can see him. Anyways, so we want to thank them very much, because without them, we won't have a show.
Right. Yep.
We'd just be us on the radio again.
Yeah, we'd still be on the radio, and you can see our shining faces.
Right.
So,
on my gorgeous mug.
Oh, God, I know. You've all been dying to see Ron's face.
A lot of people like this show. In fact, it's being carried by a bunch of studios now. I mean, a bunch of towns.
Yes, yep. We're up on the Mass Access server, so I know a lot of, it's like 10 to 12 towns carrying the show, and we really appreciate that.
And if you don't have it, then,
Yeah,
so they can join and...
Yes, yep. Anybody who is in cable access can download the show.
Is that only in Massachusetts?
It's just in Massachusetts, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have a cable show outside of Massachusetts and you would like to get a copy of the show, I'd be happy to send it to them.
There you go.
So there you go.
Absolutely.
So drop me an email at my website, which is neghostproject.com, the letter N, the letter E, like New England, ghostproject.com. And, my email address is on here, and we'll send you a copy.
Awesome.
As long as you play it.
Yeah.
But anyway. So we've got a great show tonight, and I'm kind of excited because, it's all about something I really love. Lighthouses.
Lighthouses, ta-da.
Yeah, so anyways, before we get into that, I understand you've prepared us another journey into the crypts and graves and tombs of some
That's my favorite
poor
places.
cemetery. Yeah. So if we could, Kevin, could we please have the cemetery tripping?
Yes.
Welcome to Cemetery Tripping, where each week I will feature a different cemetery that I hope you will seek out and enjoy as much as I do. You can see my pictures on Facebook by doing a search for Cemetery Tripping, or following the link from the Ghost Chronicles Next Generation page. Today I would like to share with you a cemetery from Bucksport, Maine, appropriately named Buck Cemetery. This is a small family cemetery that would be fairly nondescript if not for the notoriety of one monument erected there, namely that of Colonel Jonathan Buck. He was born in Haverhill, Mass. in 1716 and founded the town of Bucksport in 1762. His family erected the large monument which stands at the front of the cemetery facing the main road, approximately 60 years after his death. Mysteriously, an outline of what looks like a leg and a foot appeared on the face of the monument. Although an honorable leader of the community who was key in the development of local industry, somehow a legend sprung up regarding the odd stain. The legend goes that Colonel Buck condemned a woman as a witch and sentenced her to death by burning. As the sentence was being carried out, supposedly the witch cursed him and said, "So long shall my curse be upon thee, and my sign upon thy tombstone." As she burned, her leg rolled out of the fire, and her deformed son, who was rejected by the community, grabbed it, further insulted the colonel, and ran off into the woods, never to be seen again. It is also said that attempts to remove the stain from the stone were futile, so they ripped it down and erected a second stone, only to have the stain reappear. No one really knows how this tale came about, but it is quite a story, and to this day the cemetery is a tourist attraction in the town of Bucksport. However, it only takes a small amount of logic and application of history to poke quite a few holes in it. The era of colonial witchcraft and the infamous Massachusetts trials were over long before Jonathan Buck was even born. There is no record of anyone being burned or otherwise executed for witchcraft in the state of Maine. In addition, this is the original stone, not a replacement. Stone cutters say this kind of stain is common after long exposure, but can be removed by repolishing and buffing the stone. However, when it is exposed to air, the surface will eventually oxidize and the stain will reappear. Due to the tourist attraction, the cemetery is surrounded by a wrought iron fence with ornamental spikes on the top, perfect to deter a cemetery tripper like me from entering the site. And believe me, I tried. But it is a lovely historical site that deserves a stop if you are ever visiting the Bucksport area. There is also an awesome Fort Knox right across the river from the cemetery, into which you can gain entry without injury.
And we're back.
We are back.
Yes, we are back.
So that was Fort Knox.
That was Fort Knox at the very end of that clip in Bucksport, Maine, and that is an awesome fort. I mean, the cemetery.
But it's not like the Fort Knox.
Well, not where they have the gold. No, it was named after the Secretary of State, I believe, at the time.
Yeah, back in the olden days.
So it was named after him. But that is an awesome fort.
Really?
If you ever are up there, go over there. Very cool place.
Any ghosts?
It is supposed to be haunted. Yes, it is. They have haunted ghost tours and things like that. It's
Road
very
trip.
cool. Yeah, I know. I didn't get to go on the ghost walk, but
Wow. So anyways,
neat.
let's bring us into the future, which is
Okay.
now. And we have on our show today, which is kind of cool, he is the author of this book, along with this book, and this book, and
the whole
this
library.
book, and a whole ton of other ones. He is a lighthouse historian. He is a paranormal investigator, too.
Yes.
After all these years, I guess I can call him that. And a good friend of mine, he is Jeremy D'Entremont. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Ron.
Welcome to the
Hey,
show.
Ann. Thank you very
Hello.
much. Thanks for having me.
So how many books have you written? I mean,
I lost count. I don't know. I usually say over a dozen because one that was a long book was broken up into 4 new volumes. So do I count that as 1 or 4 or 5? I'm not quite sure. But
I'm
I
not
like
sure
to count
either.
it as 5. So
Okay,
anyway, about a dozen or so.
really. And they're all predominantly about lighthouses.
Yes. Yes, you have a couple there that are not about lighthouses, but most of what I've written has been about lighthouses.
And no, I just happened to grab this one, which is a good book because it's little. And
It's got lots of pictures, too.
yeah, it's got pictures too.
it's
and,
Ron's favorite kind
you
of
know,
book.
Now
Lots
that
of pictures.
Now that my wife don't let me watch Playboy anymore, I mean, read Playboy anymore for the pictures. I mean, the articles. I go to this one.
Something like that.
But this is kind of different. It's not lighthouses. It's shipwrecks from the Maine coast.
Lighthouses make appearances in there now and then, but yeah.
Do they?
And ghost stories make some appearances in there as well.
And that's what we're here to talk about, by the way.
Right.
We're here to talk about the
Ghost part.
stories.
Yes. Yes.
And Jeremy knows more about ghosts than anyone. In fact, we've done a lot of investigations together.
Yes, we have.
So Jeremy, anyways, I have this neat idea, and it just came to me as I was sitting here doing nothing.
in a vision.
Kevin, how about if we play a game? And Kevin's our director,
Kevin's
right?
our director, yes, he is.
What if we play a game called Lighthouse Roulette? And you throw up a picture of a lighthouse, and we'll tell you the story behind it. How about that? Can we play that, Kevin?
Okay.
All right.
All right, we're working on a picture.
I guess we're working on a picture.
It's coming.
There we go.
There it is.
All right, so here's a cool picture. So what do we got here?
We have Owl's Head Lighthouse in Maine there.
Owl's Head.
And this
All
is
right.
someplace you and I have been to together, right?
I've actually done a mini investigation.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, you're wearing a Friends of Flying Santa sweatshirt. It was part of a Friends of Flying Santa bus tour that we went to Owl's Head Lighthouse and did a mini
so
investigation
we can cut
for.
back to us,
We'll come
Kevin.
back and explain what that's all about
Yeah.
later, maybe. But Owl's Head Lighthouse is in Mid-Coast, Maine. It's near Rockland, at the entrance to Rockland
Okay, here
Harbor.
it is. This is
Yeah.
what we're talking about. Friends of Flying Santa Claus.
Yeah.
If you get a close, can we do close-ups? I don't know if we can do that.
They can try, I don't know.
Do we want to explain what that is now, or do you want to come back to that a little
No,
bit?
we're going to talk about this because we mentioned about it, and we'll go right into Owl's Head. This is a
There you go, that's
sweatshirt.
better.
It's Friends of Flying Santa Claus, and it's basically an organization that
It's a nonprofit that continues a tradition that goes back to 1929 of delivering presents. It used to be actually dropping presents out of a plane at lighthouses, at remote lighthouses on islands and so forth along the coast of New England, actually dropping presents for lighthouse keepers and their families as a way of showing appreciation for the important job they were doing. But it continues today. Excuse me, the lighthouses are all automated now, so there's no more real lighthouse keepers except one at Boston
Right.
Harbor.
Oh, wow.
But,
and what's her name?
her name is Sally Snowman.
Sally Snowman?
Yes,
You believe that?
That is how she pronounces her name.
Really?
But anyway, it continues today mostly as a way of saying thank you to the Coast Guard. So helicopters, Santa Claus in a helicopter lands at Coast Guard stations from Jonesport, Maine, way up in northern Maine, all the way down to the New York coast. And more than 1,000 children of Coast Guard families each year get a present from Santa Claus as a way of saying thank you to these Coast Guard families that are doing such important work for us. So this has been going on since 1929.
Wow.
FlyingSanta.org if people want to look it up.
Yeah, and they're always looking for donations, like most
Absolutely.
groups, nonprofits. Well, they do. I mean, it costs a lot of money to take care of this.
It's a great cause.
And the interesting thing is, do you know that a lot of the people that deliver these, the helicopters and stuff, they actually donate their
The helicopters and Santa Claus and the pilots and basically everybody who plays a role in that program donates all their time. There's
That's
nobody
awesome.
paid for it.
Yeah.
And the kids just love it. But
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
so, anyways,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, Jeremy and I did this bus tour for them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we
We
did.
saw like 10 lighthouses in
Yeah,
2
a couple of days. We went all the way up the Maine coast, all the way to West Quaddy Headlight at the
There's a
easternmost point in
lighthouse.
the U.S.
There's another one.
Ooh, nice.
It
yeah.
was.
It was
a lot of
cool, yeah. And we went to Owl's Head Light in the evening and did I think it was around, we were there until like at least 10 o'clock at night
It
or
was
something like
dark.
that. And we did a kind of a mini investigation there. But Owl's Head Lighthouse has been called the most haunted lighthouse in America. I believe it was Coastal Living magazine a few years ago that said
Really?
that. It's been featured in documentaries on haunted lighthouses.
Yeah,
and so
Travel
forth.
Channel's done some stuff on
Yeah,
it too. As
yeah.
well.
And why
I
is
even got
it-
to play the Lighthouse Ghost in a Travel Channel
You did?
documentary at Owl's Head Lighthouse. Yeah, if you ever, they still show it once in a while. It was done about 10 years ago. But if you ever see the Haunted Lighthouses of America on the Travel Channel, you see a shot of a lighthouse keeper in uniform on the deck at Owl's Head Lighthouse, looking out to sea from behind, and that's me. So anyway, if you happen to see it again, but Owl's Head has many ghost stories. I have, over the years, interviewed lots of people who live there in the Keeper's House. The Keeper's House, by the way, is now the headquarters of the American Lighthouse Foundation, another organization we're involved with. But anyway, I've talked to many people who lived in that house, and almost everybody feels that there's some really weird stuff going on there. They've experienced.
So, what kind of weird
Yeah,
stuff?
what happens?
One,
We want to know.
yeah. I first heard about it like in the late 80s when I interviewed the last keeper when the light was being automated and he was leaving the lighthouse. And he told me, he said, by the way, you know this place is haunted, right? He said his wife had seen a female apparition in the house. He was one of many people who'd seen a really odd thing outside the lighthouse. Typically what would happen was after there had been a snowfall, he would go out early in the morning. And anybody who's familiar with Owl's Head Lighthouse might know there's like a walkway and then some steep stairs going up to the lighthouse. He would go out after a snowfall and he would see footprints in the snow on the walkway as if they weren't coming, he didn't see them coming across the yard or anything. They would just appear, start on the walkway, go up the stairs to the doorway of the lighthouse and end there.
Oh my
and
God.
not go anywhere from there.
Wow.
So how is that possible? And he found that a number of times, and he was, like I said, he was one of many people who've experienced that there. Sometimes even like after a heavy dew in the morning, they would find the footprints
That's
out there.
awesome.
I want to give a shout out to our studio audience that just walked in. Hey, Nathan.
You're late.
Nathan, there's a chair over there. Grab it and, yep.
Hey, guys.
There you go.
Oh, that's funny. Yes,
Welcome. Oh, you can do that.
we
There you
can pull
go.
up the floor, that's okay.
It's good to have a studio.
We like
And
an
in fact,
audience.
if you want to be part of our studio audience in the future, just email Anne or myself, and
Sure.
we'll tell you how you can. Right?
It's, yeah, Anne, A-N-N-E, @ebctv.org.
There you
You can
go.
come down and see us. We don't care.
Yeah. And, you know, it's you get to meet our guests and ask questions if
Yeah.
you want and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Good
it's kinda
deal.
cool.
And it's
I like
free.
that.
All right, so that was the predominant story.
That's one of the most common ones, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of other ones. One of his predecessors, a guy named John Norton, told me he was up in one of the upstairs bedrooms at night, swore he was wide awake, not sleeping, hadn't been drinking or anything else, and very clearly saw the face of an old man looking at him in the room. And it just
My
kinda-
wife says the same thing.
Do they know
maybe
who it is?
maybe not a paranormal
Yeah.
explanation.
Do they have a guess about who it is? Or?
There's no specific story that people use to, explain the ghost there, but it seems to be a keeper. A lot of people feel that because he keeps walking up to the lighthouse and
Right.
everything.
Makes sense, yeah.
But other people have seen swirling lights in the rooms upstairs. One of my favorite stories, I know we could probably talk for an hour just about Owl's Head
Is this
Light.
the one
but-
about the children?
Yeah.
Yeah, the children, you got to tell.
Yeah,
If you weren't
yeah.
going to tell it, I was
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
bring
yeah.
it up.
One of my favorite stories, that a woman who lived there in the early 80s with her husband, or mid-80s for a couple of years, Debbie Graham, emailed me a long email about this is what life was like at Owl's Head Lighthouse. And at the end she said, oh, and you know it's haunted, right?
Oh, by
And-
the way.
Yeah. So, of course I knew. She wasn't the first person to tell me that. She told me that when she first went to move in there with her husband, and at the time they had a 4-year-old daughter, Claire, and the couple that was moving out had all kinds of strange experiences, including seeing an indentation and a bed upstairs moving around as if somebody was there when nobody was there and things like that.
Wow.
So they told the Grahams when they were moving in, there's one upstairs bedroom that's the most haunted part of the house. You don't want to use that bedroom. And the Grahams just laughed and said, that's ridiculous. We don't believe in that kind of stuff. So they made that upstairs bedroom their 4-year-old daughter Claire's bedroom.
Oh my God! Really?
So
Here,
they lived
kid,
there.
you
I
can
think it was.
sleep
I think
here.
they just lived there for 2 years, and the entire time it turns out that Claire had an imaginary friend, who she described as
Traumatize your kids, I guess.
Yeah. there you
described as an old sea captain. And one night, about 11 or so at night, they were asleep. The Grahams were asleep in their bedroom. Their little daughter Claire comes into the bedroom and woke them up, and said, like was really anxious. Said, "Wake up, wake up! Fog's rolling in. Time to put the horn on."
Oh my God!
As a 4-year-old, they had never talked about anything remotely like that to her.
So how did she know?
Yeah. So they figured the old sea captain must have told
Oh,
her.
that's incredible. That's
All right,
cool.
so
I like that.
that's pretty much all head. There's a lot many more stories, and I could talk about our investigation and everything. But so let's give the old wheel a spin and see what can come up next.
All right.
Here we go.
Ooh, that's a good one.
What do we got?
That's our home base in a way.
Really?
Portsmouth Harbor Light.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
It looks a little scrunched on our monitor, so maybe you didn't recognize it. But that
That
is
looked a
Portsmouth.
little shorter than normal.
Yeah, it's lost a little height, but that is Portsmouth Harbor
Happens
Lighthouse.
when you get old.
It's in Newcastle, New Hampshire, next to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is where I live in Portsmouth, not in the lighthouse. But
I always thought it was funny.
feel like I
they
do
call
sometimes.
it Portsmouth Lighthouse, but it's in Newcastle.
well, it's Portsmouth Harbor
Yeah.
Lighthouse. It's at the
Oh,
entrance to
okay.
Portsmouth Harbor.
Horrible
Hence the name, Harbor.
Horrible.
But
harbor.
anyway, we have a lot of personal experience with that lighthouse, of course. I don't know if you want to mention, Ron, that we are part of an organization, Friends of Portsmouth Harbor
Oh,
Lighthouses,
absolutely,
that takes
yeah.
care of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse and Whaleback Lighthouse near there. And you are the
Actually,
chairman.
And you are the operations manager.
Yeah, so
And we not only take care of Portsmouth Harbor, but also Whaleback, which is right here. This is one we actually own. We own this lighthouse.
Oh,
I have the
nice.
key to it, by the way.
not just the picture, we own the actual lighthouse.
Wow, you're
I have the key to the
Key
lighthouse. How many people
carrying-
have a key to the lighthouse? You know?
carrying
Isn't
measure.
that cool? Yeah, well, yeah. So anyways, we actually own that one, and we were doing a lot of work on it. So
It's a fantastic
yeah.
place.
So this is actually We had it for a second, but
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Well, this is one of the investigations at Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse. Before we talk about your investigation, shall I say a little bit about the kind of stories that have been told and that kind of thing?
right,
Yeah.
right, absolutely.
I first got involved with Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse in 2001. The lighthouse had just been licensed to the American Lighthouse Foundation for its care. That's basically happening all over the country. The Coast Guard is kind of getting out of the business of taking care of these historic structures. They just don't have the budget anymore for that. So the lighthouse was licensed to the American Lighthouse Foundation, and not too long after that I founded the chapter to take care of it. And not too long after that, over the next couple of years, I started hearing lots of stories from the Coast Guard. It's on an active Coast Guard station. It's on Coast Guard Station, Portsmouth Harbor. And I started hearing these stories about the Coast, there's a neat picture that we'll talk about in a minute. But the Coast Guard personnel talked about seeing shadowy figures walking along the seawall at night. One of them was doing the rounds near midnight, and the keeper's house is still there on the grounds. And he was walking towards the keeper's house, saw a man standing in front of, this was at midnight, saw a man standing in front of the house. There shouldn't have been anybody there, so he started to say, "What are you doing there? Who are you?" or whatever. And that just disappeared. And things like that, seem...
And you actually had your own experience previous too. When you hear the voice?
That was a little later.
Well,
but,
whatever.
Yeah, it was just a couple of years ago.
Whatever.
But I'm one of a number of people that have heard a strange voice inside the lighthouse. Well, it wasn't that strange, but it was strange to hear a voice that seemed to be coming from
what
nowhere.
was the situation?
Right.
What
I
was-
was giving a tour for two people at the top of the stairs in the afternoon, middle of the day. And as I'm talking, I was leaning against the ladder that goes up into the lantern, the top part of the lighthouse, and I'm leaning there. And as I'm talking, I hear "hello," and it sounded like it was just around the corner to my right, at the top of the stairs. There's a doorway there, and I felt like if I leaned forward and looked beyond that doorway to the top of the stairs, I was going to see a man standing there, because it sounded like somebody was standing right there, like "hello." And so I
Wow.
stopped and I said to the couple, "Did you hear something?" And the man said, "Yeah, I heard a man say hello." His wife didn't hear a thing.
Oh, that's funny.
So we went downstairs, we looked all around, there was nobody in sight, nobody anywhere near the lighthouse. Our former chairman, Ross, one time was up painting in the top of the lighthouse by himself and had headphones on listening to music. He kept thinking he heard a voice, so he took them off and he heard, "What are you doing?"
Sort of like Russ,
that
huh?
same low voice.
Russ's voice of God. What are you doing? The show ended 10 minutes ago.
Anyway, Ross decided that it was a good time to pack up the paint and go home at that point. But,
Wow.
and we've also had sightings of a figure.
So you called us in, basically, to
In
do an
2005, New England Ghost Project was called in to do an investigation, and we saw a picture before of, I think it's the second Portsmouth Harbor one, a picture of Ron and company in the top of the lighthouse there at the top of the stairs. But anyway, we had that on the screen earlier.
Right.
That was August 2005, and it's hard to believe it was 9 years ago.
You know what? That's how I got involved in it, because I enjoyed the lighthouse so much after
That's
doing
why
it.
you look
this-
so much younger.
This picture was taken later, I'd say a couple of years after that, during one of our nighttime tours. We do periodic nighttime tours for the
We
public.
do?
We do. And that picture was taken by a woman named Veronica Pollock during one of our nighttime tours, and that is inside Fort Constitution. Fort Constitution is right next to the lighthouse. The fort and lighthouse are both very historic sites. There's been a fort there since 1631. I mean, it's hugely historic. First skirmish of the Revolution happened inside that fort
Oh,
in
wow.
December 1774.
Wow.
Anyway, so Veronica Pollock took this picture looking out from inside the fort, out onto the grounds of the Coast Guard station, late at night, nobody around, nothing moving out there at all, just a snapshot with her digital camera, and that's what she got.
Once again, this is during our haunted tour.
What a lovely green
And we do these tours once a month
Awesome.
in the summertime, and I think it's like $20 per person.
Yes, for a 90-minute walking tour.
90-minute walk tour. It's like a mini investigation though, because we you not only tell you the stories and stuff, but we give you EMF meters and dowsing rods, and we try to make contact. It's kind of neat, fun little thing. Everybody's really enjoyed it, and
They
all the
usually
money,
sell out,
absolutely, all the money goes into the preservation of the lighthouse, both. Portsmouth and Whaleback.
So we haven't announced this year's tours yet, but we will pretty soon, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go to our website, which is
PortsmouthHarborLighthouse.org.
and check them out.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we did this investigation in 2005.
Yeah, and that was my first ever close-up paranormal investigation. I've always been interested in this stuff, but I never got to take part in something like that before, and it was pretty neat. You and Maureen Wood, the trans medium for New England Ghost Project, and a few other people on the crew that night. And a lot of stuff happened.
Like what? I mean, where was some of the cool stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
thanks.
let's see. It's hard to know what to start with because a number of really cool things happened.
Well, just the highlights, basically. And,
Yeah.
And I think one of the highlights of that night, of course, was, as we mentioned, Maureen's a trans medium. She made contact with a soldier from the fort.
Well, that was a different night. That wasn't the
Whatever.
first time, but yeah. I know you hate the way of. I'm sorry.
We've done about 5 investigations.
Yeah,
They kind of rattle.
They all
And,
blend
but I
together.
think, and talking about investigation, not necessarily the first one, but that was connecting with this soldier is one of the high points, I think, anyways.
Yeah, it was really interesting. She's apparently made contact with that soldier a couple of times.
Yeah, that's why I bring it up. And
Well, to explain that, in the fort there, Fort Constitution, the worst thing that ever happened on that site was an explosion, an accidental explosion that happened on the 4th of July in
right, and
1909.
some of the soldiers were killed out of
Yeah,
it. And
10
this
people were
was-
killed. It was
this
actually about half civilians, including
Right.
several children.
And this was one of them that was killed, that
too
she made
bad.
contact
Yeah.
with, and he felt kind of bad
Guilty,
about
kept
it.
saying, it's not my fault, it's not my
Right.
fault.
But there are other ghosts that haunt Portsmouth as well, including a long-lost keeper.
Yeah, a lot of the stories tend to tie into Joshua Card, the keeper who was there for 35 years.
Wow.
And he supposedly has been seen by a few people during the day. We've had 2 different volunteers who, a couple of years apart from each other and didn't know each other at all. We didn't publicize this at all. But on 2 different occasions, these women both saw a figure standing on the walkway in the middle of the day that they described as somebody wearing an old-fashioned...
There he is.
There he is.
There he is.
That's the
Squashed
captain.
down, but
Yeah,
At least on our monitor, he was kind of squashed.
You got a little squishy on the
But
monitor.
anyway,
gained a little weight
he was
since
actually
last time.
described as a very tall, strong man. He was 6'2" or so, and he was there until he was 86 years old. He was keeper until he was 86. He was the oldest lighthouse keeper in the United
Oh my
States at the time.
God,
He
wow.
retired in 1909, and he died 2 years later. He did not die on the site there, but he died in Newburyport.
But it's been
But
seen
anyway,
there
but
many
it's
a
been
time.
seen. Apparently, he still keeps watch. And these 2 different women, a couple of years apart, saw a man standing on the walkway in front of the lighthouse. There's like a long wooden walkway that goes out to it. And they saw this man standing there. They said he was dressed in an old-fashioned uniform. And in both cases, they thought, oh, they have costume guides now showing people around.
Oh,
And
wow.
then as they got closer, he just wasn't there anymore.
Neat.
And we never did have costume guides. So. Another woman during one of our nighttime events swore she saw him standing in the base of the lighthouse in overalls. She came to me and she said, could he be wearing overalls? Well, sure, if he was doing...
And one of the things about Joshua Card, too, is most of the keepers at that time had a K on their uniform, which stood for keeper. And he would always tell the kids that it was captain, it meant for captain.
K for captain.
Okay,
So
for
anyways,
captain.
we actually have an EVP that's kind of tied into that. So if we can play that EVP, Kevin?
We're just gonna find it. It's okay.
Okay, it's...
We're looking for
Yeah,
it.
if they're looking for it, that's fine.
Yeah, this was recorded during that first
It should be,
investigation.
It should-
Lighthouse EVP
I think it's...
number 1.
Yeah.
I think so.
If not, whatever. Okay, here we go.
Okay. We're still looking.
Oh,
We'll
we're still
find it.
looking? Oh, okay.
Well, it's in there.
Anyways,
It's in under the clips.
okay.
It's in under the clips, guys.
So anyways, one of the other persons that, we'll go back to that, haunts it is the last, well, is it the last keeper's wife, Connie Small?
Yeah. And during that first investigation, do we have the EVP?
Yeah, we'll hear it. Let us know. Go ahead.
During the first investigation in 2005, Maureen seemed to make contact with Connie Small, who was the wife of the last keeper there in the 1940s. And this is August 2005. Connie Small had just passed away in February 2005 at 103 years old.
Wow.
And I knew her quite
Oh,
well.
she's younger than me.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
Just remember. Okay, I guess we have it now. Okay. Let it go. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we usually when we play EVPs, Kevin, we like to play them 3 times in a row so that we can hear them. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You did that? Okay,
Well,
thank
yeah, it's under
loop?
under the picture, so it was probably difficult for us to hear in here.
you. Okay, okay.
So
So anyways, that was,
it's
you
played.
did hear it.
All
Okay,
right.
which was an EVP.
That was in the lighthouse at
Yep.
the top of the stairs, late at night, recorded during that first investigation. And Karen, who was with the group at the time, you heard her voice say, "Who's there?" And then it sounds like the man's voice says, "The captain." I like that.
Captain. Remember,
Captain.
he used
I
to
hope
tell
he-
everybody he called him.
that's
called-
cool.
he liked to say
Do
the
we
K
wanna-
stood for
Do you
captain.
think we could try and play it one more time, just in case?
Well, that's okay.
No?
We actually have
Okay.
another one
All right, we're
that
good.
we want to talk about, and let's bring that second one in. So,
Yep, there's a second EVP recorded.
number 2, yeah.
Number 2, yeah. Yeah.
This was recorded later at another investigation,
Think you should check the
the
light.
lighthouse.
And this was at the end of,
Think you should check the light. Think you should check the light.
okay. So if you didn't hear that, that was Jim Stonia, who was EVP specialist for the New England Ghost Project. We were up on the outside deck late at night,
Yeah.
and he says, "You think you should check the light?" And then he got the voice that said, "Okay."
Okay.
Yeah.
That
And
one was very
Of
clear.
course, probably all your listeners know that with EVPs, it's not heard at the time. It's only heard later when it's played back.
So anyways, Kevin, can we play another game of Lighthouse Roulette and give us another baby?
Ooh, Wood Island.
Wood Island, okay.
This is
Oh,
your
nice.
baby, Ron. It's been
Yeah.
something you probably want to talk about more than me because I haven't actually taken part in any investigations
This
there.
is actually up in Biddeford Pool, Maine, and it's a wicked cool place.
Beautiful place.
I've spent the night, they drop you off by boat. You come by a landing craft,
Oh, okay.
you know, when the front comes down.
Uh-huh.
And then you
Oh,
have to cross
that's
the
neat.
entire island. There's a boardwalk that runs the entire length of the island.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to carry all your equipment there. And we stayed there. We've done several investigations, and we also did some fundraising events for them as well. And there's been so many really, really cool things happen. And just to mention a couple, I mean, everybody talks about, you know, seeing ghosts, you know, and you watch all the TV shows. What do? The first thing they do.
The first thing they do when they walk in,
Yeah.
they all take their meters out and
Well, the
whatever.
first thing they do is, you know, is they throw everybody out of the house, and they
Oh, right,
Then
right,
what else
right.
do
You
they
clear
do?
the place out. Yeah.
clear the place out, they shut
Yeah.
the lights out.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yep.
And but most ghosts or spirits are seen during normal time.
Right.
Yeah. You don't have to,
You don't have to be in the dark.
you know, it's cooler, it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun that way, but that's why they do it. So this happened to me, and it's, to me, it was one of the coolest things, is that we had done an overnight investigation with the public, and this was Sunday morning, and the investigation was over. I was sitting in one of the rooms with Sherry, who's one of the directors there at Wood Island, and we were just having coffee at a picnic table because it's not furnished at all. And I looked into the kitchen, and right by the kitchen door, I saw a dog go by.
Oh,
Yeah, but you,
Wow.
you have a dog, Ann, right?
yeah, I have two.
Right. So you know that when a dog goes on the kitchen floor, what does it sound like?
Yeah, you hear the nails.
Right. There was no,
Clickety, clickety, click.
no
Yep.
sound at all.
Oh,
So I got up, I did a double take, and ran into the kitchen. There was no dog. And I ran to the doors are all closed. Went to the other rooms. I mean, it's not that big of a place. So
Right.
there was no dog in that house.
oh my God.
So I came back, and Sherry says to me, why, Ron, what did he look like? And I says, well, I can describe him very clearly because I saw it like it was, you know, Nathan here sitting on the floor. I mean, absolutely. It was perfectly clear, perfectly solid. So I described the dog to her, and she just started laughing.
Really?
And I says, what are you laughing at? She says, well, it's an interesting story that you described that dog, is that one of the lighthouse keepers had a dog there, but the dog hated boats. He was afraid of boats.
Oh,
So when the keeper's time was up and it was time for him to leave the island, he wouldn't go.
the dog wouldn't get on the boat.
So he stayed on the island, and all the lighthouse keepers afterward would feed him and everything else, but he never went in the house. And then eventually he died on the island. And the dog I described was the exact breed and color and everything of the dog that died on the island. Now, can I say
incredible.
that was the dog? No, I can't say that, but it was an
else would it
interesting
be?
coincidence. So that one to me was one of the coolest thing that happened at Wood. The other thing was cool, and this is, you know, I talk about spiritualism and stuff. I like doing different things like glass swirling and like you saw in the beginning of the show, and also, you know, the Ouija board. I'm not afraid to use that or other things. So last investigation we did there, we were, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. We're getting kind of tired
It
and
always
silly.
is, isn't it?
Yeah, I know it.
2 a.m. You're like,
And we took out this thing that Leslie had, which was called the Spirit Circle. It's like a combination of Ouija board and glass swirling, excuse me. And so we asked questions of it, and we got all this information. This guy came through by the name of Scud. He said he was a pirate.
Scud?
Scud the pirate.
Sounds like a whistle to me.
I know it. And he said he had Spanish gold buried on the island.
Okay.
And he was trying to give us the location and everything.
Really?
Right. So anyways, we kind of had fun with it, and that was it. But after the investigation was all over, and we all went home, and we did some research on it. And it was really funny because there was a pirate by the name of Scudmore who was actually
my God,
hung
that's funny.
in Boston.
Wow.
Just down the coast. Now, the pirates used to go up and down the coast. And I found another newspaper where Spanish gold was actually found in Biddeford Pool. So, wasn't that far-fetched after all? So, those are my 2 cool stories. There are many, many more.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Kev, can we play another game of Lighthouse Roulette? Give her a spin. Here we go.
Do you know what that one is, Ron?
I have no clue.
Okay, I don't think so. That's one we haven't done, an
That's
investigation.
a neat-looking lighthouse.
This one is currently up for auction, by the way, from the federal government.
Wanna buy it?
Ooh, let's buy a lighthouse from.
Yeah, it actually, they tried to auction it a few months ago. They didn't get enough bids, so they put it on hold. Now it's about to be auctioned again. But anyway, this is Penfield Reef Lighthouse in Fairfield, Connecticut.
Oh, I've been to Fairfield.
On the Long Island Sound coast. It's right on the border, actually, between Fairfield and Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's off of Penfield Beach in Fairfield.
All those rich people down there, they couldn't find someone to pick up this lighthouse.
I know it.
Wow.
And this actually has one of what I consider one of my favorite lighthouse ghost stories, because a lot of these stories, we don't necessarily know the source of the stories, or there may be a legend that may or may not be true, that kind of thing. Here we know that a keeper drowned. And the stories tie into him. What happened was in December 1916, there was a keeper by the name of Fred Jordan, and he was the head keeper, and he had an assistant keeper by the name of Rudolph Eiten. And Jordan was going to go...
Eiten?
I-T-E-N.
Never mind. Moving on.
But anyway, so Jordan was going to go to his home to visit his family for Christmas. And he left in a small boat, and he was a wood carver, and he had carved toys for his children for Christmas. So it's a very sad story, this part of it. Oh. But he left a few days before Christmas in the small boat as a storm was coming in the afternoon. He thought he could beat the storm to shore. It's only a mile or so to shore. It's not very far. But the waves were getting bigger and bigger, and the wind was picking up as he left. Eiten saw Jordan basically struggling in the waves. He saw the boat overturn. He saw Jordan waving for help. Eiten tried to launch another boat, but it was just the weather was too bad by that time. He was unable to get to him. So he saw his head keeper disappeared in the waves. And his body was later found. Interestingly, when they found Fred Jordan's body, he had a note in his pocket that he had meant to give to his assistant, Eiten. And the note said, "Don't forget to finish the entries in the logbook for today." So that kind of figures into the rest of the story here. About a week after Jordan had drowned, Rudolph Eiten, who then became the next head keeper, replaced Jordan after his death. So Eiten was the head keeper. He was on the second floor of the lighthouse in his bedroom one night and he saw a figure walk by his doorway like it was going downstairs. And he said the figure emerged from the room that had been Fred Jordan's room. And he said it was like a gray phosphorescent figure. This figure went downstairs. Eiten got up and followed, and there was nobody there. And he came back upstairs, and when he came back upstairs, at a desk on the second floor, the logbook for the lighthouse that he had definitely left on a shelf had been pulled off and was open on the desk to the day that Fred Jordan had died.
Oh my
as if he was
God.
reminding him again to finish the entry for that day.
Wow.
Because he still hadn't written a description of what had happened that day.
Oh my God.
And
That's
over the next few
crazy.
years, Eitan and his assistant keepers saw this figure several times in the lighthouse, and he actually had them sign affidavits saying that they saw this, so people wouldn't think he was
Would have
nuts.
been cool if he actually had finished it.
I
the
know,
ghost.
right?
And
If
then
the ghost
they
had
could
filled in
actually
the
check the
logbook,
writing. That would have been awesome.
that would be neat.
That could
That
be
would
a
be
proof to be
really-
paranormal.
Yeah.
And there were lots of other sightings over the years, and there are supposed occasions where the ghost helped people, like a couple of young boys whose little boat went aground at the lighthouse there, and they were almost unconscious, they had almost drowned, and they said that some mysterious man appeared and pulled them up to safety, and when they got up and looked around to thank the man, there was nobody there.
Wow.
And they described it as an old sea captain looking guy or something like that.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and another boat was supposedly helped around the rocks by a mysterious man in a rowboat, and I think it was...
So can we spin another wheel and see what we get?
Ooh, Seguin Light in Maine. This is the sunset picture.
That's one of my favorite stories, by the way.
Yeah, there are two lighthouses in New England that probably have the most famous ghost stories of any of them, and this is one of those two.
It reminds me of Anne so much.
Okay.
What?
Well,
You'll hear.
yeah, I don't know about that, but anyway, so I'm not going to get in the middle of that. Seguin Lighthouse is located at the mouth of the Kennebec River in Maine, kind of near Bath and Boothbay Harbor. It's on a very high island. It's like 200 feet above the water. It's very dramatic. It's got a huge lens. It's got a 9-foot-tall glass lens from the 19th century made of multiple prisms. I could go into that for a long time. It's a beautiful lens. But anyway, the ghost story that's often told of this lighthouse has to do with a piano. And I'll tell you the story as it's usually told. Okay. They say that in the mid-1800s, a keeper went out to live there with his wife, and they say that soon after, or after a few months living out there, that his wife became very bored. And that is not at all hard to believe. You know, they were out there by themselves, so there wasn't a whole lot to do. The wife became very bored, and they say that she asked her husband for a piano to help pass the time. So her husband bought a piano, had it brought out on a schooner, and men carried it up the high path, the steep path up to the keeper's house. They put it in the keeper's house. And this woman got her piano. She got her wish, but along with the piano, she was only given one piece of sheet music, okay, like a popular song of the day. She learned how to play that one song, but it's all she knew how to play.
Oh my God.
I guess she wasn't good at improvising. She didn't have any other sheet music, so she would play that one song over and over and over and over and over, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to the point that it drove her husband insane. And
That was her plot all along.
they say that he, just went nuts. He couldn't stand hearing the song anymore. There was an axe, I think, for chopping firewood. He grabbed an axe, proceeded to chop up the piano into kindling wood. And this part of the story is the part that isn't so funny. They say that he then killed his wife and killed himself with the axe. So you have to stop laughing now.
How do you kill yourself?
But I know it. I know it.
Right?
I know it.
I'm gonna.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's the story as it's usually told. And they say that ever since then, if you're on Seguin Island on a quiet night, or even if you're passing by in a boat and listen carefully in the breeze, you're going to hear that same piano song playing over and over.
Oh, so
and
that
over
reminds you of me because I complain when I hear the same thing over and over.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can sometimes.
I would be chopped
somehow
up. I would be
can-
chopped
yes,
up, that's it.
I can understand the axe murder thing. Yeah.
Well, I just want to, one follow-up to that story. I always, I have to say there's no record of that happening. We don't know for sure. It may have some truth in there, but there's no record of a keeper, murder-suicide thing there.
Right.
But a lot of people say they've heard that piano music out there. And a few years ago, I was on a Coast Guard boat visiting some lighthouses for these special inspections, and this woman from the GSA, General Services Administration, was on the boat, and she said the week before she was on Seguin Island, she was walking around by herself. She had never heard the ghost story, knew nothing about any of that. She heard soft piano music in the breeze.
Wow.
And she said it sounded like a memory, which is a neat way of
Oh, that's
describing
cool.
music. And she said she went to the caretaker on the island. She said that was really pretty, who was playing the piano. He said there's no piano here, nobody was playing any music, so you must have heard the
There you
ghost.
go.
Wow.
So anyways, you're listening to Ghost Chronicles Next Generation with Anne Kerrigan and Ron Kolek, and we're speaking with author and lighthouse historian Jeremy D'Entremont, and he is the author of this book. And if you want to know all about lighthouses, this is just New England. Look at this. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so
It's a travel guide, tells you how to get to them, the best ways to
really
see them.
cool.
and-
So anyways, if anybody has questions, they can certainly reach us in the TojiNet or the Parax chat room, or if our studio audience has a question, just let us know. So, oh, we have a question. Go ahead, Nate.
We'll take it.
What lighthouse have you not been to that
Repeat
you'd
the
like to
question.
get to?
So
What lighthouse have I
Wait a
not
minute,
been
she
to?
repeats the
I'm
question.
sorry.
Don't step on her toes.
I didn't know the protocol here. I'm sorry.
Well, so it was what lighthouse has Jeremy not been to that is haunted?
That he would like to get
Oh,
to?
that you'd like to
Haunted
go
or
to?
not? Okay, that's a good question. I will say that it took me about 20 years, but I have been to every lighthouse in the New England states. There's about 160.
Wow.
But I've only photographed like 250 lighthouses altogether. I know people that have been to over 1,200. People get obsessed with this as a hobby.
See that?
I would really like to get back to Florida. I've seen a few in Florida, but probably the first lighthouse I ever saw in my life was the St. Augustine Lighthouse in Florida. There are home movies of me in a baby carriage in front of it.
Oh my God!
But I haven't been back
wow.
since, and it's one of the most incredible lighthouses in the country, and I would really...
I actually know the people there.
Kathy
Oh
Fleming
yeah,
is the
they've
director.
been on the show before. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That is, I'd
And
love
that's
to. I'd
also
love
haunted.
to see
It's also
that.
a very haunted
Road trip.
lighthouse.
Road trip.
We should all
I
go
would
there.
love to
yeah.
see that lighthouse.
So I'd love to go to
yes.
that. But as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of other ones too. I mean, I've never been to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Cape Hatteras Lighthouse there is one of the most famous anywhere.
And what's the one
Really
that's
like to
near
get that one.
Pensacola? Is that?
Pensacola Lighthouse,
The
which also
Pensacola?
is known for being haunted.
Because
know them,
I've
too.
actually been outside that lighthouse because I have my brother lives down
Oh,
that
you
way.
know them. We've had them on our show, too.
Yeah, they were on the same show. We had them on that same,
yeah, we
that
had-
same show.
yeah.
But yeah,
Anyway.
that's a beautiful lighthouse.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, at the point in time that I went, it wasn't when they were running a tour, so I couldn't get in.
Yeah.
But
You could use your
it's
influence now.
beautiful.
Don't
That's
you
right.
know who I am? I'm the blonde Bombshell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that'll
think that was
get-
That'll
featured
get
in that.
me right in.
I'm sure it will.
I think Pensacola was featured in that Travel Channel documentary.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Okay, so I know we are running out of time, so could we have another one of the spins of the wheel, please?
Rose Island,
Ooh,
Newport, Rhode
hit the
Island.
jackpot. Now, Anne, you've actually been to this one.
I haven't been in it.
You've been on the island.
I've been on the island.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been on the island. So,
It's a
but
beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
out in off the harbor in
Nice.
Newport, and you can see it from along the shore in different places in Newport. It's kind of almost halfway to Jamestown, so you can also see it from the shore of Jamestown, Rhode Island, near the bridge between Jamestown and Newport. And it's built in the 1870s, and it's on the edge of a fort there, Fort Hamilton on the island. It was in ruins in the 1980s. The place was all boarded up. It was falling apart, and the Rose Island Lighthouse Foundation was started, and they've restored it, done a beautiful
Wow.
job.
Done a great
You
job.
can
Yeah.
stay overnight there. They just had more work done in the past year or so since we were there. So it's looking great.
Yeah, that's one thing, you know, people say, well, how can I go to these lighthouses? Well, there's one you can go to. You can rent the room there. You can stay
overnight there.
overnight.
right?
Yeah, you
Right.
can absolutely stay
And
overnight there.
they're open to paranormal investigations.
Yes, they are. Dave McCurdy, friend of ours, who's the director there, is definitely
guy.
interested in the subject. of
Once again, you
paranormal
know him, Ann.
investigation.
I have met Dave, yes. Very able-bodied sea captain. Yes.
yes,
he
he is.
brought us over there in pea soup fog. I mean, it was socked in, and I was like, oh my God.
He knows how to handle a boat.
Yeah, he
We're
does.
never going to get over
Last time we were there was an
Just about a year
adventure.
ago, I spoke at their annual meeting, and Ron came with me, and he took us out to the lighthouse late at night in the
We
dark
stayed
on a
overnight.
rough night with big waves.
Yeah.
No searchlight, no windshield wipers.
His light was out on the boat, and
Oh
he
my
still
God.
managed to ride the waves and
Yeah.
swing the boat around like 360 degrees and jump
just-
out and tie the
just
boat
Right
up.
into the
Wow.
wreck. Amazing,
Absolutely
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah, 'cause
But it's a
I-
cool place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It isn't.
So, I mean,
yeah.
how was it when you were there, Ann? I mean, did you get the good feeling or?
We
or what?
we went into the barracks.
The fort,
There into some of the barracks
which they're turning into
areas.
overnight rooms these days.
Oh,
Yeah, they're
that's
gorgeous
cool.
now. I've seen them.
What a great idea! Yeah, those places are awesome. It was weird. Like one we went in, that really didn't seem a lot going on. But then we went down to another one, and like the air was just totally different.
Yeah.
Just just the way you feel it. Charged.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
an interesting thing that you bring up, and I know it's a little bit straying from the subject, but we often talk about that. You can almost feel it, how it's haunted.
Yeah.
You can feel it. I mean, you can walk from one room to another room,
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and it definitely
definitely.
changes. You definitely have a different feeling on it.
Yeah.
And I think it happens to so many
I've
investigators.
gotten feelings about that. Either there's
Yeah.
nothing going on or there's
Yeah, at
something
Portsmouth
going
Yeah,
on.
you
Lighthouse,
kinda
we have
feel
that
it, like-
tower where you can go through the
Yeah.
tunnel there. The what's it called?
Sallyport.
Sallyport. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's named for Sally
Yeah,
Port.
whatever. Anyway,
But
you could feel it there.
You definitely do feel it. I think, like, you know, like, you feel it, like, right there. It's like, it's almost like a tightness.
That's where I get it, yeah.
It's until you experience it, you don't really understand it, I think.
Yeah.
I agree.
Do we want to talk about the investigation we had at Rose Island?
Oh,
That was pretty
absolutely. Yeah.
interesting.
We have enough time. Yep.
Yeah. I hadn't heard many ghost stories about Rose Island until the last few years, but certainly Dave McCurdy, the director there, feels there's a lot going on. He and his wife have experienced footsteps on the stairs at night, you know, and they've stayed there overnight and doors opening and closing. Ghost Hunters was there a few years ago and had a bunch of
Where
stuff
haven't they
happen in
been?
their show.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
Where haven't they been?
Yeah, whatever.
Right, true. But anyway, when we went there and said, you know, take over at any time, Ron, but a couple of years ago now, and we had a pretty big group that night, and Tom D'Agostino, the haunted author, was part of our
Yep.
group that
Tom
night, which was pretty
D'Agostino.
neat.
Yep.
Yeah.
But a number of things, interesting things happened. One thing was we played with one of the flashlight thing. Dave used
Oh,
his.
Dave is big into that.
Yeah,
You know, I'm not like
flashlight.
really. You know, for those who don't know, we're talking about you take a flash like a magnite and you loosen it up so it just
Yeah, he does that.
goes out, and then you put it down and you ask questions to turn it on and off.
Like
and
if
everything.
it comes on, it's yes or
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. But I'm not a big believer in that either. But that night is the best performance I've ever seen. But
I will have to agree with you on that.
yeah, it seemed for about
We did
I'd
that in
say-
the fog-
I'd say
fog
10 questions
house,
in a
fog
row. It
room
seemed to
house.
be bang, 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 as if it was answering our questions.
Right.
It was flashing.
Yeah,
you
we
know,
did that.
on cue.
In that barracks.
You did it too?
In one of the
Was
barracks.
Dave
The
there?
barracks,
or-
yeah, Dave, yeah.
Yeah.
How did it respond? Was
Yeah, like not so well in one, but very well in another. Yeah.
That's the same thing. We only had it in the fog house room.
We were
there.
in the fog signal
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting, and it seemed to point to. It said it was a nurse who had lived there in the fort or whatever. I think married to a soldier or something along those lines. But whatever. But
They all blend
later,
in.
yeah. Later that night, we tried some table tipping. First, we did a small table on the first floor with you, me, and Dave,
Right.
and the small. I don't know if everybody knows what table tipping is, but we put our fingertips on the edge of the table, and you said something like, "If there are any spirits here, as long as they mean us no harm, please let us know you're here by moving the table for us."
Basically.
And after a few minutes, it felt like a vibration in the table, and then a few minutes after that, the table started going boom, 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 boom.
And you could
boom,
ask questions and it would
yeah.
answer.
And it started going boom, 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 like around in a circle, I swear.
Wow.
And at one point, it was coming around in a circle towards me, and I started pressing against my chest.
Ah!
And,
It actually went to him a couple
yeah,
times.
and I said, kiddingly, "Please don't hurt me," kind of
Yeah,
like
right.
that.
Kiddingly.
And
Now it's kiddingly. Back then it wasn't kiddingly. It was like, well,
it was
terrible.
not like that. But
it's
I,
true.
Rod loves to
Dave and I were talking about getting shirts made up and saying,
Yeah.
please don't hurt
I'll
me.
wear it.
jerk."
I'll wear it. I'll wear it gladly, proudly. So, anyway, then later in the night, we were up on the second floor where there's like a modernized apartment, and there was a
The
big,
keeper's house.
big heavy where they have people you can stay for a week and be the keeper for the week. And they had this big heavy like oak heavy wooden table, and we all 6 of us sat around that, and put our fingertips
7
on it.
actually, yeah.
I always said 8, but I thought somebody told me it was 6. It was 7, whatever it was.
7,
7. Okay. And we all put our fingertips on it, and same thing. We had our doubts that it was going to move because it was so big and heavy, but vibration after a few minutes, and then this big table started.
We're talking a huge table.
Really?
We have a video of it too because we taped. But I mean, you're talking, what's that, 4 inches?
Yeah.
4-inch oak table, double pedestal. We had that thing moving so much, jumping and spinning
It
and
was
everything else.
unbelievable. I wouldn't have
It
believed it if I
loosened
wasn't
up
there.
all the things.
If I wasn't there, I would no way
And
I'd believe
we're
that.
talking about people who had never done table tipping before.
The energy when the room went up, so everybody was laughing and
Oh, yeah.
applauding at times. At times, some of
Yeah.
us were taking our hands off it, and only maybe 2 or 3 people had their hands on it, and it was still jumping around. And at the very end, it kind of almost completely left the floor, like
Yeah, jumps up.
2/3 of it,
drops.
boom, boom, this big boom, and we
So
all
that was
applauded.
a really cool place.
Wow.
So do we have any more we can spin in the Lighthouse Roulette?
I
Let's
just
see
want
what we
to
got.
I want to add quickly that I'm speaking on May 1st at the annual meeting for the Rose Island Lighthouse Foundation on haunted lighthouses at the Yacht Club in Newport, the Newport Yacht Club, May 1st. I think it's 7:30 p.m. RoseIslandLighthouse.org if people want to read about that.
Okay.
Okay.
So what was that lighthouse?
Ooh, Prospect Harbor. And that's one we don't talk about too much. The story that people talk about here a lot, there's a couple of things. This is one that the public can't really get to very easily because it's on a Navy base way up in the northern Maine coast. But they say that the father of the last keeper, like in the 1940s, before the light was automated, the father of the last keeper died of a heart attack as he was lighting his pipe, they say.
Yeah.
And one of the common things is that people smell pipe smoke in the house when there's nobody smoking there. So that seems to be pretty common. The other popular story about that lighthouse is that people, it's overnight, it's like vacation accommodations for military families. So military families go there for vacations.
Oh,
and
nice.
And commonly they say they see this, there's a sea captain statue on a windowsill by the stairway, and they'll see him facing one way, and they go by again later, even though nobody's been around, and he's facing the other way. He changes positions by himself.
Wow.
That one was featured in the Haunted Lighthouse show on the Travel Channel too, and if anybody sees that and sees the shadow of the ghost going up the wall, that's actually my shadow going up the wall.
Again?
Oh,
Wow, you're
wow.
very, I didn't ever
You're a
realize
star.
that.
I spent a week with the
Should I
Travel
get his
Channel.
autograph or what? Anyways, do we have any more in our little pool here that we can take our spin over? Oh.
Ram Island light.
Okay, so that's not really a light, that's a sea lamp.
Yeah, it's a teeny tiny little.
I have reclassified all lighthouses. That size is now called sea lamps. So anyways, quickly on this one.
Okay, this is up near Booth Bay Harbor, Maine, and I'll try to make it real quick. Before there was a lighthouse there, this fishermen used to kind of park their boat there with a light in it because it was considered a dangerous area and they wanted to help guide vessels around the area there. For a while, there was no light there before they built a lighthouse, but there are a number of stories of people coming towards the island in rough weather and suddenly seeing a ghostly light appear that helped guide them to safety. And in one case, the captain described a woman just appearing out of nowhere holding a torch.
Really?
That
Wow.
helped guide them.
Sure wasn't a red lamp. Anyway.
I think we better wind it
So
up.
we got to wind it up. Before we go, I have a 30-second question for you. So yes, and we have 30 seconds. Good.
Oh, we have 2
Okay,
minutes.
so here you go.
Oh, we have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I talk.
All right.
Okay. So Jeremy, you have
Yes.
a 30-second question. Your 30-second question is, do you believe in ghosts?
Do I have to answer yes or no?
Yes, you have to answer the question.
Kind of depends on which day you ask me, but I'll say yes.
And why do you believe in it? That's just a short answer. We were really looking for a little. And why would you believe in ghosts?
How can I not, with the experiences I've been part of? I always, it's kind of a cliche, but I like to call myself an open-minded skeptic. I'm always looking for other explanations, and I think that's healthy. But there's just way too much evidence to discount this. I don't know what's going on. I don't know the answers. I don't think anybody does. But there's something going on that's very, very interesting. I don't know if ghosts, to call it blanket ghosts, that's one word for it, but there's all kinds of paranormal
Thank you so
stuff
much.
that's going on.
So anyways, you've been listening to Ghost Chronicles and watching Ghost Chronicles Next Generation with Anne Kerrigan and Ron Kolek, and our special guest has been author Jeremy D'Entremont. And so, you know what? I think we ought to do this, is the three of us ought to go to some haunted lighthouse
Okay.
and tape some stuff and come back for a show. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea.
Huh?
All right.
St. Augustine, Pensacola?
Okay. Well,
Road trip. That's a
we're going to
long
Florida.
road trip.
All right.
That's
but
a
we
long
do have to
road trip.
wind up.
Can we go before tomorrow's storm?
Sure.
Yeah, fine. So anyway, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the
Thank
show.
you. That was
Thank you for
very
having me.
interesting. Thank
Until
you.
next time, tune in next month.
Yep. Next first Wednesday in March. It's going to be March. It's going to be spring. So,
Unless, of course, we get a storm again.
yeah. No more storms.
Okay.
But thanks for listening, everybody. And thank you to our crew. And everybody have a
And
great
our
week.
audience.
Good night.
Good night. God bless.
From goalies to ghosties, long-leggedy beasties, and things that go bump in the night. Deliver us, good Lord.